Welcome back to Comics with Drew. I'm Drew, and today I want to talk a little bit about the channel and a couple of different changes that I'm doing here. Also, I want to show a little bit of new content. So, the name of the channel is Comics with Drew, and that's great because I've been doing lots of stuff about reviewing comics and talking about comics. But one of the reasons I'm even doing this channel is because I am trying to make my own comic book. And I want this channel to kind of reflect not just reviewing comics and talking about comics and talking about why they're good or they're bad, but I also want to talk about making comics because that's important to me. When I was a kid, I I didn't have any kind of formal training. I grew up pretty much before the internet. And so any kind of instruction that I got was basically from cartooning books at the local library, the public library. In my case, the Orange County Public Library, specifically the downtown Orlando one. One of the reasons I liked that place was because it was one of the only places I could go to find actual instruction or guidance on how to make comics, comic strips, or comic books. In my case, I wanted to make comic strips as a child. I remember one time I went there, I was like 15 or 16 years old, and I came across some other dude who was a comic artist, right? And so we got to talking, we met in the comic book section, and you can tell this is a different time because he's like, "Hey man, I've got some comics. You want to see some of my art?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, sure, no problem. Yeah, it's just out in my car." Now, you wouldn't do that today because that's insane. But back then, I was like, "Yeah, sure." I trusted the guy, and I went out, and sure enough, he had a hatchback full of his art that he was drawing, and he showed me all the different things that he did. He showed me his tools of his trade. He showed me kneaded erasers. I think that was the first time I came across a kneaded eraser in my entire life. If you're not familiar, this is a kneaded eraser, and it doesn't look like this when you get it. It's a nice clean square or rectangle, but this is like one of the single most important inventions having to do with art that I can think of. But anyway, the point of the matter is that there isn't a lot of instruction out there. In fact, one of the reasons I even started following Ethan Van Sciver is because his channel is called Comic Artist Pro Secrets, and I wanted to learn how to actually make a comic book because I've been drawing web comics my entire life, and with in some kind of futile effort to be a syndicated comic strip artist like Bill Watterson or Charles Schultz. And so I hadn't really looked into doing actual comic books, and the library, going back to when I was a kid and a teenager, the library was the only place you could get those kinds of books or that kind of instruction. So to that end, I happened to go to church with a Disney animator at the time. Disney used to actually have animation done in Orlando, and one of their artists or key clean lead artists was a guy who went to the church, and I remember trying to ask him tips on how to be a better cartoonist or a better artist. And he showed me, he gave me one tip that I have never forgotten, and this is about the only tip he gave me. He said, "You need to get a book called How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way." And I don't have a copy of it in my library right now because I've lost it, but I'm going to get a copy of it again, and I'm going to review that because I want to start reviewing books and making videos that talk about how to make comics, because I do these reviews of these comics, and I crucify them and I shred them apart figuratively, and maybe I need more. Maybe I would get more viewers if I actually physically shredded them. I don't want to be destructive, but maybe that's what the people want, right? So give the people what they want, Trebek, as Sean Connery would say in SNL. But anyway, what I want to do is I don't want to just critique comics and critique the writing and the construction of them, especially independent comics, without talking about, I think, how you should make comics better or the better techniques for them. There are actually a lot of issues with independent comics these days, and I mean like by small creators and even large creators that are independent. And honestly, to tell you the truth, people like Ethan Van Sciver, they're a small creator. I mean, they make lots of money. That this has nothing to do with the quality of the work or the amount of money that they make. But the fact of the matter is that a person that's basically doing it themselves and they founded their own little company, that's a small creator, okay? And there are a lot of independent comics made by small creators that I think, suffer from basic technical issues that should not be a problem. Your comic book should either suck or not suck based upon the quality of the story and the quality of the art. And it burns me up when I see a comic that has a problem that is entirely avoidable from a technical standpoint. And that brings me to one of the reasons I wanted to make this video today. I just picked up a book called The Essential Guide to Comic Book Lettering. Ta-da! The Essential Guide to Comic Book Lettering. It's by Nate Picos. Nate Picos, in my opinion, is one of, if not the best letterer to ever letter. Nate has, first of all, he's done so much for comics and independent comics, and you probably don't even know his name because he goes by Blambot on Twitter, and he has a website called Blambot Fonts, and he has many free to use fonts for independent comic book creators, and he has done work that I don't think people really understand I don't think people really understand the importance of what he's done. Before I even knew who Nate was, I found Blambot Fonts, and then I used his Crime Fighter font for my own webcomic. So I've got probably 100 or so webcomics that are lettered with Blambot. In fact, the logo for my webcomic is Bada Boom, another Blambot font. And you know, the fact of the matter is that without Nate, people's lives would be so much harder. I mean, before I even knew about the Blambot fonts, I would hand letter all my comic strips. So I would put a piece of Bristol down, I'd pencil it all out, I'd get the rulers out, and then I'd get an ultrafine Sharpie because I didn't know better, and I would letter out, hand letter all the dialogue on my webcomics. And so then I'd scan that and I'd color it and whatnot. And when I decided to go to a more traditional comic book format for my webcomic, that's when I said, you know what, this is not going to cut it. I need to get better fonts that look more professional. And that's where Blambot came in. So talking about the hows and what to do's and what not to do's of making a comic book, I think is important. And I wanted to do more videos along those lines. So I'm not changing the format of the channel. This is still Comics with Drew. I'm just broadening it a little bit more because, again, there are many independent comics that I see issues with, and I don't want to just sit here and take shots at people, even if they're constructive. I want to make sure that I'm kind of showing people the better way to do things. With recently doing some of my live streams where I'm doing drawing, I've seen questions where people are saying, how do you do this and how do you do that? And like, how do you start with a story, or how do you start with a character, or what do you recommend for this tool, or how to draw this, or what kind of lead should you use? Things like that. I've noticed that there's, I think, a demand out there for that, and I think that there's very few channels that specifically deal with certain aspects of making comics. I mean, there are fantastic channels about how to draw, okay? There are fantastic channels about coloring. I've not come across any lettering channels personally. Maybe that I've not looked hard enough for them, but I wanted to start, mentioning things like that. So this isn't a channel about lettering, and this isn't a video about lettering, but I want to show you that I think it's an important part of any creator's responsibility to make sure that the book is lettered properly. And that's just a technical aspect, and that's one reason why I wanted to talk about the fact that I just got this book. So again, Essential Guide to Comic Book Lettering by Nate Picos, and he is, again, like I said, possibly the best letterer to ever letter, and what he's done for the community is outstanding, and he doesn't get into any kinds of drama. He just does his lettering, and he's appears to be someone who really cares deeply about the art. And so I'm going to review this book. And I want to tell you what, this isn't a review for this book right here. I'm actually going to do a video where I review this book and I show you why it's such a great book in the first place. I've actually not even read it. I've just looked at the contents, but I know based upon the contents of what's in this book that it's going to be fantastic. And one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to get some of my old webcomics and I'm going to re-letter them based upon what I learned in this book. So you're going to see before and after both the hand lettering and also the digital lettering, and because I've got two different types of my webcomic that I used to do. And I want to show you just how important it is to get this right, because the difference is night and day between bad lettering and great lettering. I mean, good lettering will make a difference because you can actually read it, but then there's lettering that takes it to just such a higher level. So one of the reasons I actually like Nate Picos's lettering is his work in Middle West. If you've not read Middle West, the lettering that Picos does in Middle West is staggeringly good, right? I talk about great artists and I talk about great writers, but great lettering will take a book to an entirely different level of art and a different level of visual communication. So it's not just about, you know, what font you're choosing and the fact that you're getting the grammar right and the punctuation right. You can look at word balloons, how word balloons are arranged, how words are accented in certain ways, what types of fonts are switched up, things like this, to really convey sound and communication in such a manner that it affects you on a subconscious emotional level. That's fantastic lettering, and that's what Nate does. So I cannot wait to review this book. This is going to be a bit of a long form video when I make it. It's going to be at least probably 30 minutes, to tell you the truth, because there's going to be so much to get into. But I want to show you the fact that this is a new kind of format. I'm going to start doing all my videos on camera now. Oh gosh, I know. That's exactly what you were looking for, right? So I feel like it gives a more personal engagement. So anyway, I'm still doing comic book reviews. I got plenty of them coming up, and hopefully this will be better. Let me know in the comments if you like this or if you like magic hands better, and we'll see where it goes. But I think that this is the best way to go forward, and I can't wait to see where it leads. So coming up again this week, the Essential Guide to Comic Book Lettering by Nate Picos, and that's going to be fantastic. And I'm also going to be doing additional independent comic book reviews and additional comic book reviews. I'm also going to be doing manga reviews for sure, because I know I got you manga fans out there. Again, thanks for watching Comics with Drew. I'm Drew, and I'll catch you next time.